In the early morning hours of May 23, 1918, someone crept into the home of Joseph and Catherine Maggio. While the couple slept peacefully in their bed, an intruder carefully removed a panel from their back door and retrieved an axe from their own shed. By dawn, both were dead, their throats slashed and their heads beaten beyond recognition. A bloody message was just beginning to be written across the city of New Orleans. What makes someone methodically remove a door panel in the dead of night, take an axe, and brutally murder innocent people in their sleep? And why, after a century of investigation, does the identity of one of America's most terrifying serial killers remain completely unknown? Between 1918 and 1919, a shadowy figure terrorized the jazz-soaked streets of New Orleans, breaking into homes under the cover of darkness and attacking unsuspecting victims with axes and other sharp tools found in their own homes. The killer primarily targeted Italian-American grocers, creating a wave of fear that paralyzed the city and remains one of the most chilling unsolved cases in American criminal history. To understand the Axman's reign of terror, we need to step back into New Orleans of the early 1900s. The city was a melting pot of cultures, with a significant Italian immigrant population who often established small grocery stores to make a living. These hard-working families were already facing discrimination and suspicion in their adopted homeland. Against this backdrop of racial tension, and with the nation still reeling from World War I and the devastating Spanish flu pandemic, a mysterious killer emerged who would exploit these vulnerabilities to create unprecedented fear. The Axman's documented spree began with Joseph and Catherine Maggio, Italian immigrants who owned a small grocery store with living quarters in the back. Joseph's brothers discovered the horrific scene. The couple had been attacked with both a straight razor and an axe. A panel had been chiseled from their back door, allowing the killer to unlock it from inside. Police were baffled. There was no sign of robbery, no clear motive, just brutal, seemingly senseless violence. But this was just the beginning. The Axman was about to establish a pattern that would haunt New Orleans for years to come. Just 1 month later, on June 27th, Louis Bessumer and his alleged mistress Harriet Lowe were attacked in Bessumer's grocery store. Both survived the initial assault, though Lowe would later die from her injuries. The attack fit the same pattern: a chisel used to remove a door panel, the victim's own tools used against them. As summer turned to fall, the attacks continued. August 5th saw pregnant Anna Schneider brutally assaulted in her home. Miraculously, both she and her unborn child survived. Just 5 days later, elderly Joseph Romano was attacked while his nieces slept nearby. He died from his injuries. Each attack shared key similarities: the methodical removal of door panels, the use of the victim's own tools, and the selection of victims who were predominantly Italian or Italian-American grocers. But what investigators found next would change everything about how the public viewed this terrifying case. On March 13, 1919, nearly a year into the Axman's reign of terror, the New Orleans newspapers published a letter allegedly written by the killer himself. Its contents sent shockwaves through an already terrified city. "I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have designated. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it on Tuesday night will get the axe." The Axman had thrown down a bizarre challenge: play jazz music on the night of March 19th, or risk becoming his next victim. It was an unprecedented moment in American crime history, a killer dictating terms to an entire city through the media. On that fateful night, New Orleans erupted in jazz. Dance halls were packed to capacity. Bands played in homes across the city. The sound of trumpets, pianos, and drums filled the air as terrified citizens embraced the one thing that might save them from the Axman's blade. It worked, or at least no one was attacked that night. But the respite wouldn't last long. The Axman's letter had put tremendous pressure on police, who were already struggling with the investigation. Without modern forensic tools like DNA analysis or advanced fingerprinting, detectives relied heavily on witness accounts and traditional detective work. They explored numerous theories. Was this the work of organized crime targeting Italian grocers? Was it a deranged individual with a personal vendetta? Or was it something more complex? Possibly multiple killers working together. The next breakthrough in the case came just days after the jazz night. On March 10, 1919, the Axman attacked the Cortimiglia family, killing their young daughter, the youngest victim in his bloody spree. The case took a bizarre turn when Lorlando Hordano and his son Frank were accused of the crime. They were convicted based on testimony from the grieving mother, who later recanted, admitting she had falsely accused them out of fear. This embarrassing miscarriage of justice highlighted the climate of paranoia gripping the city. As 1919 progressed, the attacks continued. Steve Boca survived an assault in August, but couldn't remember details of his attacker. Sarah Lauman was found unconscious with severe head injuries in her home in September. And on October 27th, Mike Pepitone became what would be the Axeman's final known victim. And then, nothing. The Axman, who had terrorized New Orleans for nearly 2 years, simply disappeared. No more attacks, no more letters, no explanation for his sudden departure. But the mystery was far from over. In fact, one of the most intriguing developments in the case was yet to come. In December 1921, 2 years after the Axeman's last known attack, a man named Joseph Mumfre was shot dead on a Los Angeles street by Esther Albano, the widow of Mike Pepitone, the Axeman's last victim. She claimed Mumfre was the Axeman who had murdered her husband. The timing was suggestive. Mumfre had been in prison during a lull in the Axman attacks, and the killings had stopped around when he reportedly left New Orleans. Could this finally be the answer to the Axman mystery? But, as with everything in this case, the truth remained elusive. Hard evidence linking Mumfre to the crimes was scarce, and some researchers have even questioned whether Esther Albano's revenge killing was real or simply an urban legend that became attached to the Axman story over time. What do you think? Was Joseph Mumfre the infamous Axman of New Orleans? Or was the real killer someone else entirely, someone who got away with his crimes and took his secrets to the grave? Let us know in the comments below. As we delve deeper into the shadow of the Axman, we're about to discover how this mysterious figure transformed from a real-life killer into something much more powerful. A legend that continues to haunt New Orleans to this day.
Over a century has passed since the Axeman's reign of terror, but his shadow still looms large over New Orleans. What began as a series of brutal attacks has evolved into something more, a dark chapter in the city's mythology that continues to captivate our imagination. What makes the Axman case so fascinating isn't just the brutality of the crimes, explains Dr. Miriam Davis, author of The Axman of New Orleans, The True Story. It's the complete mystery surrounding the killer's identity and how he seemed to vanish without a trace. Modern criminologists have attempted to apply contemporary profiling techniques to the century-old case. The emerging picture is of someone with a deep need for control and power, who likely got satisfaction from the fear and chaos he created. The careful method of entering homes, using a chisel to remove door panels, shows someone who was methodical and patient. This wasn't a killer who acted on impulse. He planned his attacks carefully. The Axeman's infamous jazz letter reveals someone who craved public attention and wanted recognition. This narcissistic streak, combined with his brutal methods, points to a complex personality that wanted to control not just his victims, but an entire city. So who was the Axeman? Let's examine the leading theories. Joseph Mumfre remains the most commonly cited suspect, largely due to his connection to Esther Albano and the timing of his prison stay. However, some researchers have questioned whether the name Joseph Mumfre even existed in police records from that era. Another theory suggests the attacks might have been the work of organized crime. The Black Hand, an early mafia organization, was known to target Italian businesses for extortion. Perhaps the Axman killings were meant as warnings to those who refused to pay protection money. Some researchers believe there wasn't one Axman, but several killers using the same method. This would explain some inconsistencies in the attacks and the wide geographic spread. A more unusual theory proposes the killer might have been a doctor or someone with medical knowledge. The precision of some attacks and the killer's apparent comfort with blood have led some to speculate he had professional experience with anatomy. While we may never know the Axeman's true identity, his impact on New Orleans was undeniable and lasting. He changed how people lived their daily lives and related to each other, particularly in the Italian community. Lock sales soared as residents fortified their homes. Neighbors formed watch groups to patrol streets at night. The once bustling nightlife dimmed as people chose safety over socializing after dark. For Italian grocers, The primary targets of the attacks, the consequences were even more severe. Many closed their shops early or hired armed guards. Some families took turns sleeping, always keeping someone on watch. The constant state of alertness took a heavy toll on both their mental health and their businesses. But perhaps the most enduring legacy of the Axman is his strange connection to jazz music. That surreal night when the entire city played jazz to ward off a killer has become woven into New Orleans' rich musical history, a dark thread in its cultural tapestry. The Axman has continued to inspire creative works across different media. He appeared as a character in American Horror Story. Coven has been the subject of novels like Ray Celestine's The Axman's Jazz, and continues to feature prominently in books and podcasts about unsolved crimes. As we look back at this chilling chapter in American crime history, we're reminded of how unsolved mysteries continue to captivate us. The unanswered questions, the speculation, the lingering sense that the truth is still out there somewhere, all combine to keep the Axman's story alive more than a century after his reign of terror. Perhaps somewhere in this city there are still clues waiting to be discovered, old police records that haven't been properly examined, family stories passed down through generations, or perhaps the truth died with the Axman himself, whoever he may have been. What do you think happened to the Axman? Did he die? Move away? Or did he simply stop killing and continue living among the very people he had terrorized? Let us know your theories in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories from America's dark history. The Axman of New Orleans reminds us that some mysteries resist solution, becoming instead a part of our collective imagination, lingering in the shadows of history, much like the killer himself once lurked in the darkness of the Crescent City's streets.